After years of reviewing everything from the cheapest, most budget bikes to those very top-end bikes, I've realized a lot of people when it comes to buying a new bike are just asking the wrong questions. So here are 10 brutal truths about buying a new mountain bike that most people either just don't know or don't want to admit. Pay close attention to brutal truth number 9, you guys. That's one I still struggle with to this day. And do me a favor, leave a comment down below. Let me know which one of these brutal truths you struggle with the most. Brutal truth number 1. Components matter, but not as much as you think. Mid-range parts today are insanely good. So the difference between like a Shimano Dior SLX and the top-end XTR, very, very small difference, very marginal gains. You quickly get into diminishing returns. Now on the other end of the spectrum, if you're talking about like the cheapest possible parts and components, like a Shimano Q's 10-speed drivetrain compared to something like an SLX, there's a pretty big difference there. But just know that like as you climb up and start to buy more and more expensive parts, you start to quickly get into those diminishing returns. And a lot of us were quick to go for something like that Shimano XT, XTR, or that new SRAM wireless transmission or something, when the truth is, most of us, like 95% of the riders, would get everything we need out of something like a base level Shimano Dior or maybe Shimano SLX, or on the other end like SRAM, like a SRAM GX. So when you're looking to buy a bike, I would say look for a bike that comes with those mid-grade, parts and components. You don't need the very top spec. You don't want the cheapest, very base spec model either. Somewhere right there in the middle, you'll find that sweet spot. And what really matters when it comes to buying a new bike is actually not necessarily just the parts and components. It's more of the frame's geometry and overall suspension design or suspension kinematics, and making sure that matches the riding style that you're doing and the type of trails that you ride. So brutal truth number 2 is that bike frame determines your future more than the parts that come on it. Drivetrain can be upgraded, brakes can be upgraded, wheels and tires, grips, saddle, all those parts can slowly be upgraded over time. Geometry can't. Suspension kinematics can't. So getting the bike with the right geometry, the right overall amount of suspension travel for the type of trails you're trying to ride, the type of riding that you're trying to do, is the most important thing to consider when choosing a bike. Now, once you've chose that bike with the right frame, the right suspension travel, the right kinematics, the right overall like geometry for the type of trails you're trying to ride, and then you're trying to pick the specific model in that lineup. I recently did a video comparing the new Polygon Cis UT, everything from the base model T6 all the way up to the top end T0. So when you're starting to compare the specific model, just kind of try and find that sweet spot without going overboard on the components, because if you get the right frame with the right geometry, the right suspension kinematics, it's going to perform amazing with those mid-grade parts, and those top shelf parts, they're not going to make that much of a difference. And that brings me perfectly into brutal truth number 3. Diminishing returns are a real thing. And so let's break it down real quick, just using some rough numbers from my experience. And then do me a favor, comment down below and let me know when you think you see diminishing returns. For me, like anything below $2,000 or like a lot cheaper bikes, and let me explain, the bikes that I usually ride are full suspension trail bikes. So anything below $2,000 for a full suspension trail bike, a bike with 130 to 150 millimeters of suspension travel, is kind of too cheap, and you're really starting to get in some really cheap parts, components, maybe even some bad geometry, although most of the geometry has been fixed these days. When you get up past $2,000 and somewhere in between $2,000 and maybe like $4,000, I know some people are going to freak out, that's a lot of money, but somewhere in between $2,000 and $4,000 is really the sweet spot. Anything beyond $4,000, let's just be honest, that's when you're getting once again up into those top level parts and components that you're paying a lot more for, but you're getting very small returns. Now you can get some differences, like this bike right here, this Rebel Rascal is in that $5,000 range, and you're kind of paying for that expensive carbon frame. So I'm not saying it won't make a difference. This bike definitely rides different, and I'd say to some degree better than some of my more affordable aluminum frames, but just know that the higher price you pay, the more you're getting into those diminishing returns. Hey guys, real quick before we get any further, I got this new hoodie I created. You see that? Hand-drawn pedal, Jared Hoff right there, pedal, eat, repeat. So I got this merch that I've been making. I do it through Amazon Merch on Demand. Quickest possible shipping, very easy return. So if you guys think this hoodie's cool, if you want to support the channel, I've been trying to make shirts and hoodies that are less about, you know, me and my YouTube channel and just more like cool shit that a fellow mountain biker would want to wear. So pedal, eat, repeat. If you like it, go check it out. If not, let's get into this next brutal truth. Brutal truth number 4. Weight obsession is a trap. So many people fuss over grams, and to be honest, if you're an XC racer, pro level, road bike racer or something like that, sure, that stuff could matter when you're talking about the difference between a win and a loss. But for 95% of us, the difference between a carbon or an aluminum wheel set, or even a carbon or aluminum frame, the difference between a couple hundred grams or a couple hundred grams here or there, really doesn't make that much of a difference. So chasing that weight, paying way more expensive prices just to get a part that's a little bit lighter isn't gonna improve your riding that much. So when you're looking to buy a bike, don't focus so much on the weight. Focused more on getting the right frame. Once again, I said with the right suspension, the right overall geometry and suspension kinematics for the type of riding that you're doing. A pound here, a pound there, doesn't make that big of a difference. Brutal truth number 5. Okay, and this is more for some of those people who buy a bike and now they're looking to upgrade it. Suspension matters way more than some other parts like drivetrain, right? So getting a fork, upgrading that fork on your bike. If your bike has a cheap fork and you're looking to upgrade it to a mid-level fork, that's gonna make a much bigger difference than upgrading some cheaper drivetrain, like a Dior drivetrain, to something like an SLX or an XT drivetrain. Drivetrains, they shift, get you to the top. Just about any level drivetrain these days, they're so damn good that it's gonna work good enough to get you to the top and allow you to fly back down that hill. But upgrading your fork on your bike can make a huge difference. Brutal truth number 6. Tires make the biggest difference out of any change you could make to your bike. But here's the thing, most bikes you buy, they're not gonna come with a perfect tire setup for the type of riding that you like to do. Take my Polygons T6 that I bought recently. It came with Maxxis dissector tires front and rear. So super fast, good rear tire, not quite meaty enough of a front tire. But I know on that bike, if I switch out that front tire from a dissector to something like a DHF, tire with a bit more grip, maybe even just a little bit wider option, it's gonna completely change the way that bike rides. Now, the bad thing about tires is that they're not freaking cheap, man. Tires usually cost around $100 each, so it can get tricky and be quite a bit pricey to really test and try different tires to feel like what's right for you. So maybe try and get out and demo some different bikes, or for me, to be honest, I usually just stick with what I know. So Maxxis tires, I tried and fell in love with those years ago, and I kind of just stick with the Maxxis tires because I know their overall casing, compound, tire tread type. I know what I like out of the bike, and I know tires make the biggest difference in the way my bike rides and it performs on those trails. Brutal truth number 7. A cheaper bike with the right contact points is gonna ride better for you than a more expensive bike with the wrong contact points. So let me explain real quick and use a real world scenario. So recently I was overviewing all the Polygon Siskiyou T lineup, and there's a Polygon Siskiyou T7 and then there's a Polygon Siskiyou T8. Now the T8 costs about $500 more, and for that $500 more, you're getting Fox level suspension, a little bit better drivetrain, but it comes with the same exact contact points. So my advice to you, if you're looking at a bike, and let's say the T8 at the $2,500, that was gonna be your max budget, you'd have no money left to spend to upgrade a bike. I think you're better off, honestly, getting something like the T7, even though it doesn't have quite as good a suspension, quite as good of drivetrain. If you get that T7 and put some extra money into getting the right bars, stem, grips, pedal, saddles, I think you'd be a lot happier with the way that bike rides. So if you know, looking at a bike, that basic setup, that basic bar stem combo, those contact points aren't gonna be right, make sure you save a little bit of extra money or buy that little bit cheaper model, because getting the right contact points is gonna make all of the difference when you take that bike out and start riding it on the trails. Woo! Yeah! Brutal truth number 8, and this one's gonna be a little bit controversial because brutal truth number 8 is you can't buy skill, but the right bike absolutely can give you that confidence to push your limits and gain that skill from riding more advanced trails. You see, I've heard so many people say, you know, some of those cliche things like, it's not about the bike, it's about the rider. And I get that, right? There's a certain level of skill you need to have to ride certain type of trails. And just buying a more expensive bike isn't gonna immediately give you that skill. But I can tell you from some rides I did recently where I was comparing a really cheap $500 Walmart bike to this $5,000 Revel Rascal SL, the level of confidence I had riding on this Rascal SL, how fast I was smashing down that trail, compared to how I rode that same trail on that $500 Walmart bike, just sketchy as fuck, super like death gripping onto the bars and wondering if I was gonna make it down. I can tell you the confidence a more expensive bike gives you will definitely translate into you being able to push your limits a little bit farther. You still got to put in those miles, you still got to gain your skills, but I don't believe that it's all about the rider and not at all about the bike. I think there's a sweet spot there. I think you need the right bike so you can progress your skills as a rider. Brutal truth number 9, and here goes one that I fall victim to all the time, you know? Don't buy for your ego, buy for your trails and the type of riding that you do. You see so many times when I'm looking at buying a new bike, I hop online and I'll see a bike and then I see like this dream build come out. Like maybe I'm looking at the Polygon Siskiyou T6 and now all of a sudden I see the T0, like an absolute dream build. Or maybe I see something like this Revel Rascal. That's definitely a bike that I had to have that was a bit out of the price range of what I probably should have spent. But the truth is, that's me buying with my ego. Do I really need a bike that's that dang expensive, that has those top end, you know, level parts, that top end carbon, super light carbon frame? No, probably not, you know? So you gotta be really honest with you, the type of trails you're riding. If you're the type of guy that's riding nothing but like mellow single track trails, taking it super easy and you very rarely push your limits, then something like a cheap Walmart bike, it could be all you need. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're a guy that's always riding the bike park, smashing super gnarly runs, really pushing your bike to the limits, then that cheap Walmart bike is gonna be a waste of your time. You need something that's definitely a lot better, a lot more aggressive, bike that comes with a lot better components that can hold up the type of riding that you're trying to do. But it doesn't mean you need to go and buy that dream bike with that factory level suspension and Kashima coating, right? But that brings me right into brutal truth number 10, you guys, because the right bike for you is the one that makes you want to ride your bike the most. So if you're that type of guy that you want to spend, you have the money to buy that top shelf bike, you're the type of guy that wants to buy that $14,000 e-bike and that's what gets you stoked to go out on the trails and smash those laps and have fun, then fuck what everybody else says. Don't listen to guys like me who are trying to find that perfect sweet spot, you know, and make sure that they don't overpay. Don't listen to other people that say like components don't matter and you don't need factory, you know, forks with Kashima coating. If that's what gets you stoked to go ride, then freaking awesome, man. Send it. Buy that bike, get stoked, go ride, and have fun. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're the type of guy that you love buying those cheap bikes, you love buying that $500 bike, and you might put $6,000 into it over the years, upgrading it to make it your own version of a dream bike, then don't listen to those people that say, that was a waste of money. You should have just bought a better bike from the beginning. Everybody knows you only need mid-tier